Hey guys, it's Miss Fiala. I just want to go over today's math lesson with you. Today is Tuesday, 4/28. Here is your FSA reference page that you have to complete. This whole page is on fractions as decimals and decimals as fractions, which is what today's lesson is on. So when we're finished with today's lesson, this page should be pretty easy for you. If you still have questions, please send me a private message on Edmodo and I can help you out. Or we can set up a Zoom meeting, okay? When you scroll down, here is your worksheet page that you have to complete for today. It's on decimals. This is specifically on converting fractions into decimals and decimals into fractions. And we're going to go over that in today's lesson. So this page should be pretty easy for you, okay? But if you still are struggling, you can message me. We can set up a private Zoom meeting, or you can hold your questions until our small group meeting on Thursdays, okay? Alrighty, I'm going to turn this around so you can see my board. Alrighty, so today we're going to review decimals. First thing I want to start off with is going over the place value for decimals, okay? So for example, if I have a decimal that looks like this, okay? So let's talk about our place value. If my decimal and these numbers were not here, I would just have the number 4. Well, what place value is just that number? Again, forget about this being here. That is in the ones place. So this is your ones, okay? And now if I was to write the number 4, that's just a whole number, okay? So I'm going to write that here too. That's going to be helpful for what we're doing today, okay? So that's just a whole number 4. That's the ones place. The place value right after the decimal point is not the ones. Some of you think that. It's actually the tenths place. Not the tens place, the tenths place. Yeah, it has that TH there, okay? The tens place would be right here next to the ones place, okay? Tenths. The number right next to the tenths place, or the digit right next to the tenths place, is the hundredths place. So again, you have that TH in there, the hundredths place, okay? That TH. Because remember, hundreds place would be over here next to the tens place. So it's hundredths place, okay? So there's our place value. We have the hundredths place, the tenths place, and the ones place, okay? The decimal point, and I'm going to write this out for you. The decimal point separates the whole number and the fractional part. Okay? So this decimal point separates the whole number, remember we said that's the whole number, from the fractional part. Because this we're going to write as a fraction, okay? That's the fractional part, okay? That's what the decimal point does, alrighty? So now I'm going to show you a couple examples. I'm going to start off with a decimal point that looks something like this, okay? Now, we want to convert our decimals and writing them as fractions, and then we want to make our fractions and write them as decimals. So how would I write that as a fraction? Well, you need to know your place value, which we just went over, okay? So I hope you wrote that down. If you need to, rewind the video and write down those place values, okay? It's helpful. So when I look at this, I want to know what place value does this number end in? What place value is that? Remember, we said the number next to the decimal point is the tenths place. The number next to that is the hundredths place. So this is out of 100. So I have 13 out of 100. And that's how I would write that as a decimal point, or as a fraction, okay? So if I had 27.27, how would I write that as a fraction? Well, again, it ends in the hundredths place, so that is actually out of 100. Same thing if I had this. Now this one's tricky when we have that 0 there because this is 4 and it ends in the hundredths place again. So this is 4 out of 100. And that's how I'm writing those as fractions. These decimals written as fractions. Now I want to go over really quickly with you, how do you really say this? Okay, so when I see this decimal, I don't say 0.13, I don't say 0.27, I would say 13 hundredths. This is 27 hundredths. This is 4 hundredths. That's how I would say these decimal points, okay? So let me show you some in the tenths place. So if we had 0.3, how do I write that as a fraction? Well, this is a 3 in the tenths place, so it's out of 10. It's 3 out of 10. And if you notice, everything that we're talking about here is tenths and hundredths. So your denominators are always going to be the 10 and 100, okay? What if I had 0.5? That is still in the tenths place, so we're going to write that as 5 out of 10, okay? And we can do a million of these examples. This would be written as 8 out of 10. That 8 is in the tenths place, okay? And now again, how would you say these? I wouldn't say 0.3, I wouldn't say 0.5, I would say 3 tenths, 5 tenths, okay? All right. I do want to go over with you, and I don't think it's on your worksheet, but I do want to go over with you. You might see it on Imagine Math. What if you had something like this? How would you write that as a fraction, okay? Remember what we said. What is in front of the decimal point? That's the ones place, and I told you in parentheses, I wrote it's the whole number. That is your whole number. It's not going to change from a whole number. This is your fraction. So now what do I have here? I have a 6, and what place value does that end in? The hundredths place. So I have 4 and 6 out of 100. That's how I would write that as a fraction. It's not actually a fraction, it's a mixed number, okay? So how would I say this? I wouldn't say 4.06. I wouldn't say 4.6. I'm going to say 4 and, the decimal point we say as and, 4 and 6 hundredths, okay? I'm going to do another one like that. So now how would I write that as a mixed number? Remember, the 2, the number before the decimal point, is your whole number. I have 2 wholes. Now what do I have over here? I have 17. It ends in the what place value? That's the hundredths place. This is the tenths and then the hundredths. So I have 17 out of 100. And that's how I would write that as a mixed number. And I would say it as 2 and 17 hundredths because it ends in the hundredths place, okay? And now let's do one. What if you had, how would you write that as a fraction? Same thing. The number before the decimal point is your whole number. I have 6 wholes. Then I have 2. What place value is that 2 in? That's the tenths place. So it's 2 out of 10. It is 6 and 2 tenths. That is my mixed number, and that's how I say it, okay? Alrighty. That's changing our decimals to our fractions. Now, what if you are given a fraction and you have to write it as a decimal? So, for example, if you have 7 tenths, how do I write that as a decimal? Well, you're going to have a 7 in the, what place value? The tenths place. So I'm going to start off by writing 0.7. And now where's the tenths place? The tenths place is right next to the decimal point on the right. So I'm going to put the 7 in the tenths place. 0.7. Or how I would say that is 7 tenths. Okay? What if you had a 5 tenths? This is my fraction. Again, I'm going to write that as 0 point. And now I'm going to put a 5 in the tenths place. The tenths place is right next to that decimal point. Okay? But what if I had something out of 100? Okay, remember we're talking about out of 10 and 100. That's it. So what if I had 32 hundredths? How would I write that as a decimal? Again, I'm going to have 0 point. I'm putting a 0 here, by the way, because I have no whole number. So I put a 0. Point. I have 32 hundredths. So I want my 32 to end in the hundredths place. Is that 2 in the hundredths place? It is, so that is correct. This is 32 hundredths. Okay? If I had 24 hundredths, I would write that as 0.24. 0.24. It ends in the hundredths place. Okay? But what if you had something like this? 8 hundredths. How do you write that? This is what I will get a lot of times as an answer. And that is incorrect because what place value is this 8 in? That 8 is in the tenths place. Is this out of 10? It's not. So this decimal is saying 8 tenths, not 8 hundredths. So that is incorrect. So I need to write that with the 8 in the hundredths place. There's the tenths place. There's the hundredths place. I'm going to put the 8 in the hundredths place. So what do you think we have to put there in the tenths place? A 0. So it's 0.08. That is saying 8 hundredths. Okay? So if I had 3 out of 100, how would I write that as a decimal? 0.03. I need the 3 in the hundredths place. Okay? All right. Now, what if I had a mixed number? So what if I had 1 and 3 tenths? How do I write that as a decimal? Remember, this is your whole number. The whole number is the number right before the decimal point. So I'm going to write 1 point. Now I have a 3 in the tenths place. So I'm going to put that 3 in the tenths place. So it's 1.3. Or we say it as 1 and 3 tenths. Okay? So what if I had 4 and 16 hundredths? Remember, the whole number is right before the decimal point. So 4 point. Now I have 16 in the hundredths place. 4.16. Okay? So that's how you would write your mixed numbers as decimals. Okay? On your worksheet page, and I just want to go over this because I think this might get a little confusing. So I'm going to do one from your homework page, okay? Or your lesson page. So one of them says 0.4 equals. And it gives you 4 over blank. And then it says equals 2 over blank. Okay, so I'm going to forget about this for right now. I need to write this decimal as a fraction. So it's 4 out of what? What place value is that in? The 4 is in the tenths place. So my answer is 4 tenths. What they are wanting you to do is simplify your fraction or find an equivalent fraction. So how did I get from 4 to 2? I divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. Whatever I do to the top, I do to the bottom. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. And there's that answer. Okay? I'm going to do another one from there. What if it says 0.5? And this says equals, this is what it's giving you, 5 over blank equals 1 over blank. How do I write 0.5 as a fraction? This is a 5 in the tenths place. So that 10 is your denominator. It's 5 tenths. Now we're going to simplify. How did I get from 5 to 1? I'm making an equivalent fraction. So I'm going to divide. That's how I got from 5 to 1. I divided 5 divided by 5 equals 1. Whatever you do to the top, you do to the bottom. 10 divided by 5 is 2. Your answer here is then 1/2. Okay? So that should help you with your homework page. I believe, or your lesson page. It's not homework. I believe that is all you have to do for your worksheet page. So that is converting decimals to fractions, fractions to decimals. I also want to show you a couple more things about decimals, okay, that we did in class this year. We talked about comparing decimals. So, for example, if I had 1.23 compared to 1.05, okay? We compared them. Which one's greater than, less than, or equal to? When we compare decimals, we need to line them up by their decimal points. Okay? So that means I'm going to take 1.23 and 1.05 and I'm going to line them up by the decimal point. So my decimal points should line up exactly. If you want to, you can put lines to make sure you're lining it up. Okay, my decimal points lined up. Now I'm going to start comparing to the left. So start comparing to the left, okay? Start comparing at the left. Just like we compare regular whole numbers, okay? So I'm going to start comparing here. 1 and 1. Those are the same digit, so I'm going to keep going. Go to the next place value. 2 and 0. What's greater? 2 or 0? 2 is greater, so 1.23 is greater than 1.05. And where were those different? Where did I start comparing these? That is the tenths place, okay? So let's try another one, comparing decimals. And this is how you would order decimals from least to greatest and greatest to least too. You have to compare them. So say I have 0.16 compared to 0.53. Again, we're going to line them up by their decimal point. Start comparing to the left. Both zeros, move on. I have a 1 and a 5. What's greater, 1 or 5? 5 is greater, so 0.53 is greater than 0.16. Okay? Let's try another one. Okay, let's go ahead and line these up by their decimal point. 3.74 compared to 3.76. Start comparing to the left. They're the same. Keep going. The tenths place is the same. In the hundredths place, they are different. What's greater, 4 or 6? 6 is greater, so 3.76 is greater than 3.74. Or 3.74 is less than 3.76.